Are you ready?
Yeah, I said we're rolling.
Oh, sorry.
Let me kind of unpack that for you a little bit.
Welcome to The Life After. This is Brady Harden, and with me as always is...
I am Chuck Parson over
Chuck
here.
Parson. Hey, we've got a great guest today, and we played a game with her before we started where we had two different ideas of how we could start off this episode. The first one was, could we talk about, whenever we talk about our testimonies about leaving the church, our
Stop
stories.
calling
God,
it testimonies, Brady.
Sorry,
Jesus
sorry.
Christ.
Somebody called them their examonies.
Trigger warning. We have to put a trigger warning on this episode.
Well, we do
now.
need to put a trigger warning in
5
this episode.
seconds in.
We do need to put a trigger warning
that's true,
because we're going to be talking about a lot of sexual things, sexual abuse, etc. But we talk about our stories, and then we sometimes involve our families, and it's like, oh my God, what do I say about my family or not? Right? The other option was to talk about fuck buddies.
Right.
We flipped a coin. Fuck buddies.
Fuck buddies won. I mean, it was inevitable.
But for this conversation,
fuck buddies
because
always win.
It's all her fault that we're talking about fuck buddies.
Yeah, that's
is
true.
Ronna Russell, and so we have to bring her on for the beginning of the segment, and then we're going to talk about her story. But first, everybody, welcome to our show, Ronna Russell.
Ronna Russell.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my ode to fuck buddies, I like to use the word friends with benefits because that's just kind of a priority thing.
FWBs.
I like to know somebody a little bit more, but that's a cool category. Am I right? As somebody who's coming out of ex-evangelical, I was very much in purity culture. I repressed myself until I was 28 from being gay, but didn't have sex until I was married at 24 or whatever.
Didn't do any gay sex.
And so finally
No
getting
sex you enjoyed.
access to that part of who I am in my body was cool. And then also at the same time realizing that it didn't have this weird soul connection because we did this crazy thing beforehand called communicating.
Oh yeah, what a concept, So yeah, I mean, I think that the first time you sort of venture out and do a sexual thing with a person, whether you're in some kind of relationship with them or not, I'm talking post evangelicalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
After you're out, it's sort of like dipping your toe in the water. It's like a little bit of how's this gonna go?
Ronna, would you describe it as dipping your toe in the water, or is your sexual experience a little bit different?
I jumped all the way in and got the hair wet all the way down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm not saying that you. Okay, cool. Great,
yeah,
great.
I was not dipping any
Brady.
toes.
Thanks, Brady. Yeah, I mean, I dipped more than a toe. Let's be real.
Ronna, does this guy know how sex works? Oh my God!
All right. Well, my point is obviously
I'm just
moot,
kidding. No,
so I'm just not going to finish it.
Tell me what you're Pull yourselves together.
But I gotta pull it together.
What did you mean?
Well, I meant dipping your toe in the fucking water, Brady. It's an idiom that people use.
Were you easing in? Is that what you're saying?
It's what I'm saying is that you're like a little bit afraid because you've been told your whole life that if you do this, it's going to have lasting negative effects on your life.
Absolutely.
So you're not like, this is going to be great. It's not like now where you're like, fuck yeah, you want to throw down? Let's go.
I was scared. I was scared to death.
This was what I'm saying, right? So maybe...
What? The lightning strike? What we scared of?
For me, It was more complicated than that because the church cultures that I grew up in, they use, so how churches use the really convenient parts of science, but then don't actually tell you the whole truth about what the science says, right?
That makes sense.
So I learned about oxytocin in high school, right? Which is a bonding hormone that's real. It happens when women breastfeed. It happens when you have sex with a person. It's released. It causes you to feel emotionally connected to a person.
Yeah.
It's when you are going through a hard breakup and you're heartbroken and you're crying and you're weeping. That's fucking oxytocin,
because you're kind of missing.
You are bonded to that person because of hormonal thing, and
It's like withdrawals.
Yes, exactly. It's like withdrawal. So I was told that if I have sex with somebody, I'm going to be connected, like bonded to them. So, or they're going to be bonded to me, or both. So then if I have a casual encounter with somebody, it's going to cause all of these emotional complications. They might get too attached to me. I might get too attached to them.
Oh my God, it's
I might
meth.
get hurt. Yeah.
Not even once.
Not even once. Right, yeah. They treated oxytocin like it's fucking heroin. So I was like really cautious about that. You know, I mean, that was one of my biggest things, you know. And it was also like, is this a road towards like, is this going to become a habit for me? Is this going to become a compulsive thing for me? Because like I grew up most of my life believing that my sexuality was compulsory and not something that I had control over because I was repressing it and it felt compulsory. So it was like, there was all kinds of like I was afraid of a lot of things that could happen as a result of hooking up with somebody. And I was like, is the rest of the world just not being honest with themselves? You know, and I had to answer those questions. So it's like, that's what I mean when I say dipping your toe in the water. It's like, is this going to be okay? And then it totally is.
Right? Was that your experience, Ronna, whenever you finally took the plunge?
Took the plunge. I think I was desperately lonely. So when I took we're talking about the big plunge.
The plunge into having fun sex.
That was a boyfriend as a teenager, and we were still very much in the church situation, and we had a lot of chemistry, and I was really like kind of hormones were in full gear and rare to go. But I think on another level, that works on several levels. For one thing, as a female, especially, your value, your virginity, your body that's your worth. That's your value.
Right.
You're worth something with it. You're worth nothing without it.
Yes.
And that combined with just being very much alone, not only in the church, but even within my own family, I felt very isolated. And I think I attached myself to this person. And I certainly was more than willing to have sex with him. But I thought that was kind of like a contract. Like, now he's him. And now I will have a person.
Right. Okay.
And we will hang in there for a few more years till I'm out of high school. And then, he'll have to marry me because I fucked him.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know that I actually went through that thought process consciously.
Right.
But that's the conditioning. And so then I was very shocked and devastated when he did not do this.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did that play out? Did you guys hang out for a while? Did you...
Yeah, but he had a whole lot of guilt about it and was kind of really veering further into the religion, and I wasn't. And he broke up with me, and I was heartbroken. And also just even more alone than I was before. And then I also felt like damaged goods, even though on some level I didn't really believe that stuff. It's just so deeply ingrained that you cannot believe it, and it's still in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite how to describe that adequately, but like you can't really disassociate from it, even when you can intellectually realize that like that cannot be true. That I cannot be going to hell for this because this is a thing that people do.
Yeah.
It's like a core belief. It's like how sometimes I'm still like, is abortion okay? You know? Because it was just told to me over and over and over. And yeah, intellectually, yes, duh. But like, yeah, it's still in there, you know?
Now I have a question, Ronna. Now, can we contrast what you just described to what it was like after your whole evangelical experience?
Hold on. I just want to interrupt for a second and just say, so the book is called The Uncomfortable Confessions of a Preacher's Kid. And this book, when I picked it up, I was like, I had a certain expectation for how it was going to start out. And it was immediately shattered in the best way possible because this book starts out saucy and hot. And there's an affair, and she says cock a lot. She says cock and pussy, and it's juicy, man. I mean, it's good.
What's juicy?
There's muscles. There's sex. There's doggy style. It's all in there, man. And I'm telling you, like, you will pick up this book and you will not set it down until you absolutely have to. So,
with that said, Ronna, can you please contrast that to your...
It's hot in here.
I know, I'm saying. Whew, somebody turn up the AC.
I need to read that. I need to read it again.
Yeah, you do. I need to read it again.
But whenever you finally came out of evangelicalism and were able to access that cool part of you where you're like, oh, I can have this sort of exchange with somebody without using them because we have communication, it's good. And to be able to jump into that, like, how much shame did you feel and how horrible was your life afterwards? And did you feel like you were never going to be forgiven? Is that exactly how that went? Because that's what I was told my whole life.
So it took me a long time to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I had to endure a 22-year marriage
Oh, yeah.
before I got to that place. So right out of the whole church culture, I was on my own for a few years as a young adult, lost and confused, and sleeping around thinking that I could, have some fun that way, but it really wasn't fun because I was too lonely to be having fun and didn't have the self-confidence to really grab those experiences and make them my own. I was still seeking connection, looking for love in all the wrong places, as the old tune goes.
Right.
That song might be before your time.
Yeah, well, don't sing it because I think we might get
I know that
sued.
One.
with the pay a bunch of money.
I can't sing. No worries. I was just kind of colliding with life, supporting myself, trying to find connections. And when I finally found one, and the person that I married, I really found a friend, and we should have probably just left it at that. But
yeah.
We got married and had 4 kids, and 22 years later, it wasn't going so well.
Mm-hmm.
And did you read that part?
Oh, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
And so it really wasn't until after, towards the end of that long-term marriage, which of course wasn't all bad.
Right.
You don't stay with somebody for 22 years.
It's always a mixed bag. For
Juicy
sure.
details to come.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't until after I, towards the end of that marriage, that I really was able to claim those experiences for myself.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there was no guilt and no shame and no fear.
Right.
I was reclaiming my life and my body and my sexuality, and I did it with.
Would you say that it was a long time coming?
I would say so.
So we're on the topic of fuck buddies. Let's talk about that because, so for me and you, Brady, we both deconstructed in a world, and Ronna too, deconstructed in a world where there were not resources for people that grew up religious, right? And that's why we started this show, you know? So when we went out and just did it, it was like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just don't have context for what is and isn't appropriate in, our American culture as far as sexuality goes.
Until Big Mouth
What is it
came
gonna
out,
be
right?
like? What's expected? Yeah, no, it was even before Big Mouth, right? So I feel which is a great show. But
It is a great show.
Thank you.
so I feel there's a lot to be said about okay, so Ronna, you described your first sexual interaction with somebody, and you had these expectations that came with it, right? And that was the direct result of not being properly educated on what sexuality is like and what it means to different people. And no talk about autonomy, no talk about consent or any of that.
Right.
So knowing what we know now, right? The three of us here about fuck buddies and about hookup culture and about when it is and isn't appropriate to hook up with somebody and shit like that. What were the things that you guys had to learn the hard way, and what were the things that you figured out?
Here's an idea that I have. Let me do that and put in a little spin on it. How about I walk you through what a hookup looks like for me?
Okay.
And I can talk people through that with with the listeners who maybe you're gay or have not had been able to have access to that part of you. What it looked like for me is now that we have apps and everything, that was one thing I had to learn was how to navigate apps.
Sure.
Right? So that was weird because you don't know what you're walking into. Let people know where you're going. If you're meeting up somewhere, have accountability because that's going to be important. Accountability. Oh my God, fuck me up. I said testimony and accountability.
It's on the it's all going in the trigger warning.
I need a palate, please. Am I allowed to say pussy as a gay man? No,
Yeah.
I feel like that cleans my palate. Okay, pussy.
Say bussy.
Bussy, there we go. That cleaned my palate. But like for me, what it looks like for now is I talk to somebody online through an app or something, and then I get to know them to where I feel like I can be a little bit more comfortable, share more pictures. If you feel a little strange that maybe somebody's not being honest with you about pictures, voice that and be honest, because we're living in an age where you shouldn't ever have to not have the ability to prove who you are. Okay, so don't meet at places like that.
Right.
Let people know where you're going. You owe nothing to nobody.
Right.
If you show up there and you don't feel right, you have the right to get the fuck out of there and to do. And you're not treating others the way you don't want to be treated. You're not like whatever.
Oh God,
you have the right. You have that right. You have that autonomy. You have that. Yeah. That consent is yours. Yes.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's different for you going into that situation as a male?
Mm-hmm.
If you change your mind, you're not going to get murdered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to have accountability, but I can't speak to women because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I know with like guys, and also I know that it's easier for us guys because we're more app focused because of how our society is. So we've had to find other ways to do that. And so a lot of these like consent conversations of figuring out what are you into? What are the expectations of this? How far is this probably going to go? What is on the table? What's not on the table? Those are conversations that are easier for gay people sometimes because we're using Grindr and able to have those conversations beforehand on an app.
Right.
Whereas they're not always the most easy conversations for a man or woman to have because I can say, I have to ask, are you a top or bottom?
Right.
And that conversation has to be done, whereas those roles are assumed for straight people, and that conversation isn't going to be as intuitive as they are going to be for gay people on an app.
Dude, totally. Straight people have a lot of a lot of protocol, I think, to still establish.
A lot of things you can learn from the gays.
That gay men, that gay people have figured out.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
There's so much built into the female male dynamic. So many assumptions made.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So Ronna, what?
Yes, I want to go with this.
Do you do the same thing if you're okay with that?
Sure.
That you had a few years before you got remarried, where you were just kind of like doing your thing. Maybe you're on some apps, on some dating apps, or like, sometimes you meet somebody at a party. What was that like?
That period of my life was actually fairly short-lived.
Okay.
Because I met someone.
Yeah.
Hello.
And then I was done.
Nothing wrong with that.
I did use a website. I really only used one website because I can tell you that as a straight female going into that world, I've never been so popular in my life. It was flooded with offers from men of every age, like 20 to 80.
Well, you are pretty damn hot. Yep. I'll say that as a gay man. Like, I would watch your season of Sex in the City because I want to know what you're up to. I want to know what you're up to.
I did when I was on this site. I changed my gender and I changed my parameters a couple of times just to see who else was out there. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I have no competition. There aren't that many straight women out there.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could really just sit back and be choosy and take my time and check everybody out. I didn't have to jump into anything. And I didn't. I have a pretty good radar, even though going into it, I was incredibly naive in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I still have a pretty good feel for people. Mm-hmm. And anything that made me uncomfortable, any little thing that turned me off, I just, block.
Right.
And, ended up communicating directly with a handful of people here and there. And it was so fascinating to have no pressure. Mm-hmm. It was like looking at kittens in a box, like all these little strays. Which one do I want to take home?
Bumble would
And
be
each
kind of
one of
like
them
that,
would have
wouldn't
been
it?
so grateful for a little attention from me. So that's not a position I'd ever been in my life, right? To have to feel like I had the power.
Yeah, no, so a couple of things out of that. First of all, what you were saying about your intuition, right? Like trust your body, right? And that's
Fuck
like
yes.
that's like something that Jamie, who's been on the show a few times, says a lot. And it's like if something feels off, just go with it. Like
If something feels
don't
off, keep it on.
push yourself. Yes, right. Don't push yourself to do something that you don't feel comfortable doing. And then like also
You don't have to understand why.
you
If
don't
it
have to
feels
have a
wrong,
good
if it
reason
feels
why,
off, yeah.
right? You can literally just leave at any point. That is your right, for sure. And a lot of times you will find out down the line that like, oh, I was in a sketchy situation, or that dude was weird, or like
I wouldn't know anything about that.
you might find right. The other thing is that I didn't get to read your whole book, but I read some chunks of it, and I can't give too much away because I didn't read that much of it. But you describe your first post-marital or extramarital sexual encounter as the best sex you had ever had at that point in your life, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, I mean, I
we
feel
just
like
have a
that's
moment of
pretty.
silence
I
for
know,
our
right? Like,
husbands?
just like, can we just like, I mean.
No, but honestly, my ex-wife would have the right to say the same about me.
Right. Yeah, because Christian marriages and Christian sexuality are just weighed down with tons of what you were saying, like responsibility and just like all of this sense of like it has this weight. And they're always burdened with this sense of like, this is it forever, and it's like,
Oh my God, I remember that
This is
feeling.
it
Oh,
now.
this is it forever.
it's so fucking horrible,
And
It's like,
I was not in a Christian marriage. I was no longer a Christian. My husband hadn't ever been a Christian, which is one of the reasons I really liked him a lot, because we could talk about stuff.
yeah.
But he was gay.
Gay men
He
are the
wasn't into
worst.
me.
Yeah.
So, and he wasn't, and I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. His story is not my story to tell.
Sure.
Right.
This is not about his sexuality.
Right.
He's married to a man. He's happy. I really like his new husband. He's
Good.
a great guy. My kids like him. It's all good. So this isn't about that. And I wouldn't want anyone to ever have the impression that I'm like, he was gay. It's like,
Sure.
he was gay.
It's complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complex,
Yeah.
and shit happens,
It's
right?
not my fault. It's not his fault that he hadn't put all the pieces together. And again, that's his story, not mine. So
That's how it went, right?
that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's just what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had, we were disconnected and had some weird shit in our marriage for reasons that I wasn't able to puzzle out
Sure.
while it was happening.
There's another thing that what you just said reminded me of, which is the fact that we are sort of, as evangelicals, indoctrinated to believe that the apex is marriage. In like best case scenario is you don't have sex till you get married. You get married to the person, you have sex with that person, and that is as good as it is. Which is like
a worst case scenario.
super not true. It's yes, it's a worst case scenario, right? It is so bad. But the fact that it got better for both of you post marriage is just like so important, I think, for people to hear, because it is hard to believe that when you are in a marriage that isn't working, where you're not sexually compatible, where your spouse is gay. And a lot of times people in evangelicalism, like in Brady's case, their spouse knows that their spouse is gay, and they are still trying to do this thing, right?
I'm on both sides. Because I was that gay person in my marriage, and then to find out I was also the one married to somebody who is now out.
And
so it's like,
Oh, weird for you.
it was
wild.
It was unexpected, and I support her to death, and her partner is fucking amazing, because she is kind of like a very empathetic personality, and she's so incredibly sweet. Oh, I'm in love with her. So it worked out the best for all of us. But yeah, it hit both of those.
I do have a friend that happened to. She was married with 3 children and realized she met someone and realized, oh yeah, I'm gay. And she went to her husband and, you know, things weren't good anyway. And she said, you know, I'm gay and we have to get a divorce. And he said, oh, okay, I'm gay too.
Oh, wow. No way. Yeah.
Oh my God.
They divorced and went on to be gay separately and raise their kids together just fine.
Yeah.
It's the new normal.
And you know what? Like, so being gay in a hetero marriage is like is like the far end example of that. But like within the spectrum of sexuality, there are lots of things that can make you incompatible with your spouse. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And all of those are valid. Right. All of those are like equally valid things.
I wouldn't say equally, but they're still very valid.
Okay.
Toilet paper roll. There's a way to put it.
Phil, that's not sexual, but yeah, for sure.
I'm talking
like
kink shame me.
I'm talking like doms and subs and like.
Okay.
I'm talking like people with kinks. I'm talking, you know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I gotcha.
I'm talking people that are, you know, whether or not you view it as an orientation, polyamorous or whatever. You know, it's like like your sexual needs are valid, and they are a valid reason to stop holding each other back sexually, right? In a marriage, you know, and however you handle that, whether you get divorced, whether you open it up, or however you handle that is like cool. But it's like, I'm just like, for me personally, like I'm a straight male, right? So
we know.
When I get divorced, I know, I'm so boring. God. I'm a straight dude.
Every opportunity he has to say that.
Yeah, right. I try to avoid it if I can. But I'm a straight dude, so it's like my sexual reasons for wanting to get a divorce are stereotypical and played out and often viewed in a negative way, right? And that's the same thing for you just want to fuck up it, you just want to have sex, right? Like that's like all it's like all valid.
Isn't valid.
It's fucking valid, right?
It is valid.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely valid. But when you're first coming out of evangelicalism, it's really hard to allow yourself to say that that's a good reason that you need to change something.
But then, like you said, you act upon it, and then it's like, ding, that all melts away. And by the way, we were talking earlier about female empowerment when it comes to putting you in power of the friends with benefits situation, or how you were able to kind of like pick through. Practically speaking, I think what may be helpful for our listeners, for female listeners, is Bumble, right? Would be a good dating app for that. That kind of puts more power.
It is definitely an inherently safer dating app.
There you
go. Or at least less annoying. I wouldn't say it's inherently safer, because you still have to meet somebody and you still have to take the precautions involved in meeting somebody. But you have to message them first as the
female,
right? So
interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of puts them in the ability to pick and choose.
It keeps your DMs from running over, that's for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of DMs, we do need to take a break. I don't know what the connection is. I'm going to have a connection by the time we get back. And I'm going to explain the joke.
We need to do a minute break.
We're done. He got it. We're winning. Thank you, Chuck.
So bad.
You just out-Brady'd Brady. That was good.
We'll be back,
after this. Okay, Chuck, are you ready? We only have one shot. We got to make this work.
Wait, you didn't give me...
Just read your lines. I'll give you the paper. Okay. Psst, are you guys ready? Are you ready? All right. Are you ready to deconstruct with friends?
What the hell? Where did all this come from?
Deconstructing your faith used to be lonely and boring as hell.
Wait.
But no one must deconstruct their faith alone ever again when you deconstruct with friends. Chuck, tell them what we mean.
Yeah, that's right, Brady.
Yeah.
The Life After has a... what the hell, Brady?
I went full-on Jumanji on this one, but keep going. He's a rental by the hour.
The Life After podcast has a secret Facebook community and Slack channel for people deconstructing Christian fundamentalism and other oppressive religions. Meet new people
And elephants.
and deconstruct with friends.
Nice job, Chuck. You even got the echo.
Thanks. That was kind of cool, I guess. Oh God, he's touching me with his trunk.
You can apply for the secret group.
It's wet.
On our Facebook by answering 3 entrance questions. Your membership is hidden, and the admins keep the room constructive and helpful.
Now, can we get this elephant out of here?
Nope, probably not. But we can.
Deconstruct with friends. Welcome back to The Life After. I'm Chuck Parson.
And I'm Brady Harden.
And we're here with Ronna Russell.
Ronna Russell. You sound like a Riverdale character or something from like
Ronna Russell. Ooh, yeah.
Superman probably had a crush on her in grade school.
Ronna Russell. Yeah.
Ronna, we're gonna jump into your story. But I want to tease our listeners. Later on in this episode, we're gonna talk to Ronna about how to navigate having difficult, like telling your story about difficult things with your family members and stuff, and how to navigate all that. So Ronna, can you kind of jump us into your story knowing that you love your family even though they do crazy shit?
Right.
I do love my family. And by family, I assume you mean children, sisters, mother,
Everybody.
living, remaining, everyone.
Everybody.
Right.
Everybody. Involved.
So here's the thing about women, and especially women who write. We are expected, if you heard of the trope, Virgin Madonna whore, you got to pick one.
No, but that makes sense. Yeah.
You're either the virgin, or you're the Madonna, or you're the whore. It's all throughout literature from the beginning of recorded history.
Yeah.
So I reject that because I'm all of them.
Cool.
Unapologetically, everybody gets to play those roles. You're the child. You're the mother if you choose to be. Most of us are throughout adulthood. You know, most women end up having a child, or 4 in my case. And everyone has the right to explore their own sexuality. So I just completely reject the whole idea that I can't be all 3 of those women and more besides.
Very cool.
I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I am all of those things. And not all of the people in my life have to necessarily appreciate the other aspects of me. And sometimes they don't. But I am all of them. I am.
I love it.
Take it or leave it.
So are we all.
Absolutely.
I think women get really caught up in judging each other, and it's a reflection of our patriarchal society because men get caught up in putting women in boxes, right? Well, like,
literally,
I don't know if you've ever followed Stormy Daniels on Twitter.
Right.
Sharp as a whip. She is fucking smart.
Oh, she's
and
hilarious.
Quick.
Yeah.
She's hilarious,
She's
right?
Yeah.
So, not that I have ever been a stripper or ever could be, but that's not my point, right? The point is to be unapologetic.
Yeah.
Yes.
She is who she is. She's also either is or was a wife. She's also a mother.
Right.
She plays all of those roles. And I think if as women, we can embrace all of who we are.
I love that. Yeah.
And not constantly be fucking apologizing to everyone for those other parts of ourselves. Maybe we could get to a place where we can just be.
That's fucking great. One thing I love about social media is the fact that we can communicate with those people. So there's a lot of like fucking porn stars, and then they have the social media, and then you kind of get a glimpse into who they are and what they care about, and you're like, holy shit, you are a fascinating, intelligent person.
Sure, yeah.
And
absolutely.
those stereotypes that we've had in our heads of like, oh, you're either a jock or you're into chess. Like that sort of bullshit gets melted away because life is nuanced as hell.
Yeah.
So what was that like growing up? Because your book, The Uncomfortable Confessions of a Preacher's Kid, that was kind of a defining relationship at the beginning, was being a preacher's kid. What were the expectations and what did your early life look like?
So the expectations were my life. Not just the trappings of being Pentecostal, which is the outer appearance, the dresses and the hair and whatnot. Super strict, incredibly strict, combined with the expectations of reflecting well on my father. That was my job, my sister's jobs, and probably my mother's job as well.
Mm-hmm.
We were accessories, like handbags or bracelets. We had to match. We had to say the right thing, look the right way, and that was really all we were there for.
So if you step outside of that, right? I mean, like it's, which everybody does, right? Because nobody is actually an accessory. So you step outside of that, and you're like it's just such narrow parameters for a human being to exist in.
Yeah.
You fall into being either the whore or those other words that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, I mean, as a child, I was scared a lot, because there's the fear of hell. That's very real. The whole rapture anxiety thing.
Preach.
The overwhelming fear. And I really was actually a good little girl, and I didn't want to be in trouble. So there was that, my dad had a pretty violent temper, and my mom was really super strict. So there's a lot of fear and pressure there as well. I just don't remember childhood being a whole lot of fun. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to just sort of be a kid and be free, and
you're kind of forced to
lightheartedness.
Yeah, you're kind of forced to think about really serious shit all the time.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, really serious shit all the time. I never thought about it that way before, but that's true. Life and death matters were at hand all the time.
So you were a pastor's kid, as per the book title. You were also you were in the UPC, the United Pentecostal Church, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is a particularly strange and strict sort of branch of Pentecostalism. As actually, like, I remember being educated on UPC because it's like largely considered a cult even by evangelicals.
Wow. Yeah.
Like they were like, well, they don't believe in the Trinity, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. What was like you? So I always like to hear. I don't like to hear, but I want to talk about particularly strict corners of Christianity. What was it like to be UPC? What was the culture like?
The culture is closed.
Mm-hmm.
You don't associate outside of the church. You don't talk to your neighbors. You don't play with the kids down the street.
Mm-hmm.
You go to school, but you can't be friends with the kids at school. You look like a fucking freak because you're in a goddamn dress all the time and you have hair down your knees.
Mm-hmm.
So, that idea, I think there's some scripture about it, of being in the world but not of it.
Lord, yeah.
I didn't pay a whole lot of attention in Sunday school, so I don't really have much recall for scripture.
Good for you.
Because I was like, but that was the mentality, right?
Yeah.
So we're here, but not for long. The rapture is going to happen any minute. You got to be ready all the time. And your point is well taken about having very serious matters on my mind from the time I was, conscious. You had to be ready, and you were scared until you got the Holy Ghost, and then you had to stay ready until the rapture came, and it could be any minute.
Any minute.
And so you're living in this constant state of anxiety that everything could come crashing down at any second. But at the same time, you have to walk through your daily life. You have to get on the school bus. You
doesn't feel safe, right?
You're not safe anywhere. Not anywhere. And there's no connection anywhere. And then, so within my family, because of the whole being on a pedestal thing and have everyone was watching us. So if like the preacher's kid steps out of line, everybody notices. It's not like just some person in the congregation who might step out of line and maybe there's a little gossip, but then nobody really cares. But when you're in the spotlight, they care. They're watching. They're waiting for you to trip.
That's so intense, man. That is so fucking intense.
It sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no doubt that it sucked. I mean, like,
I think that was why it was so easy for me to say, screw this and walk away, because it's like, it all sucked so much that it was pretty easy for me to just say, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. Any of it.
Yeah. Okay, so on top of being, I mean, so I'm imagining just existing in this like super strict rapture cult. Like that's stressful, but like on top of that, you are a pastor's kid, so the spotlight's on you.
Right.
Everybody's looking at you. You got to do everything right. You get in trouble for shit that most kids wouldn't get in trouble for.
Right.
You're pretty isolated socially, right? Like your church didn't even really socialize with itself very much.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Which is insane. That to me is crazy, because it's usually usually cults like hyper, like they're like definitely interact with each other but don't interact with anybody else. But in this case, it was like, no, your family, like your platonic family is like it. Right.
Yeah.
Not platonic. Right. Nuclear. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Nuclear family is it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Science.
So on top of all of that, right? Like your dad is like a really interesting figure in your story.
That's one way to say it.
Without giving away too much.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a big personality, big fish in a small pond. Really feeling himself.
Yeah.
He had he achieved a certain amount of success, I think, and making a name for himself and running these Bible colleges, and it all came crashing down on him because he wasn't being true to himself ultimately. Yeah, he wasn't able to do the things that he wanted to do within the church. He wasn't able to run the Bible colleges the way he wanted to run them. And so then that put him on the outs with the powers that be.
Yeah.
And he created a difficult situation for himself in several different ways. And, that's all kind of part of the story, what happened to him and how that affected the decisions I made as an adult and how I repeated some of those things.
Sure.
Shit.
Totally by accident.
Yes.
As it happens.
Okay. So what's there's an elephant here, right? Like your pastor dad had a big secret that eventually came to the forefront.
Yeah.
And left a lot of devastation, that he was gay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Ronna, but it wasn't just that he's gay. There were problems. It's one thing just to be right. Like, I mean, I repressed myself and I saved myself because I felt that the Lord thought that this was wrong. And, it didn't do anything till after I came out. But your dad didn't really decide to not do anything until it was okay within his belief system, or you know what I mean? It wasn't like he was following his own rules that he was preaching on a regular basis.
Right. There was overlap.
Right. Between
big overlap.
Yeah.
And it's because, lots of things were happening at the same time. And this is where my own life repeats this story a little bit later on. His career's falling apart. His ministry's falling apart. He's met someone and realizing, coming to grips with his own sexuality, but he's not ready to do that publicly. He doesn't even know how to do that publicly. Because at the end of his career, his ministry, which is the only career that he's ever had, he'd never worked in the secular world at all. He'd been in the ministry his entire adult life. So these are all, this is too much for one person to handle well. And he didn't handle it well. He didn't know how to handle it well. And I think he was so, once he found himself, there was no way he could turn away.
Right. And I know that a lot of men who don't have the access to their homosexuality, they end up stepping out on their wives. They do go one way. And that happens. I get it. But when you read Ronna's story with her dad, which we highly recommend.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's available on Amazon. There's other shit that her dad is doing that is not ever acceptable or not ever even understandable, of like, oh, I can see where he's coming from. It gets to a point of very unhealthy decisions that he's making that are putting other people at risk, and it's not okay ever. And so I want to make that distinction because it's not the most moral thing to step out, but when you don't have access to your sexuality or homosexuality or heterosexuality in certain ways, shit happens and you're gonna make messes. But God damn it, when you make a mess, do not be like Ronna's father. Deal with your shit and take care of it.
Well, and this is also like we didn't really mention, but this is like the middle of the AIDS crisis, right? So it's like early 80s, late 70s, early 80s or something. And this is a dangerous time to be dishonest and unsafe about your sexuality.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, that is all true. That's all true.
He was going to bathhouses, and it's still there's. Oh, I don't want to give away your story, but there's shit, and knowing that
he took risks that he had no right to take.
Yes.
It's one thing to risk your own life, and he did, but to risk somebody else's just because you don't have the courage.
Girl, yes.
To be yourself and to be honest.
Because that's wrong.
It's unforgivable, but at the same time, forgiveness is mandatory because you forgive other people for your own peace of mind.
Yeah. You don't let them live.
And I can't live the rest of my life still like being mad at my dad who's been gone a long time. I can't tell his story
because it's a consent issue.
A hell of a lot of empathy for his situation.
So tell us a little bit about what happened when your dad came out to this UPC group, right? Because you were in St. Louis for the first 9-10 years of your life or something like that. And then your dad, well, do you mind telling that story?
Okay. So I'm in like a senior in high school. We're in California. We had just moved yet again. I went to 3 different high schools in 3 different states.
Okay.
Moving. Right. Okay. So we're in California. He has a job at this church. He also has a boyfriend on the side.
Okay.
That no one knows about.
Okay.
And he gets caught.
Oh, he got caught. Okay. Okay.
So
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. There are lots of ins and outs there. And so he leaves that church, moves to LA. His partner joins him there, but he never tells my mother why he left. And nobody at the church told my mother why he left. So nobody knew what was actually happening. No one except for the pastor of that church knew, why he fired him. So he was just like spinning plates.
Yeah.
He goes to LA to start over, and he gets work like selling insurance or something, and he's living with his partner, who was a great guy and loved my dad a lot. No beef with him.
Sure.
And he's going back and forth. He's still coming home, pretending to be married to my mom. And he's just lying to everyone.
Wow.
And, that can't go on.
Right.
For very long. And it didn't. So eventually, my mom left him. And he, it's another, honestly, kind of a shitty thing is he made her do it, He made her take all the steps. And I really felt for her then and feel for her now. Coming from that same UPC background, she had no framework for sexuality at all, but especially not for homosexuality.
Right. Wow.
Completely outside her entire frame of reference on any level. So she's got no way to cope and no way to process it. And
Probably blaming herself.
it's it's a sin. He's rejected Christ. There's no understanding of biology, just basic biology, right? So you can't process something that, oh, he's gay. No, it's like he's rejected Christ. And now not only committing the biggest sin you can commit, he's going to hell. So there's 25 different kinds of heartbreak in there for her.
Wow. That's exactly why I wanted to talk about that story, is because like, it's like, obviously you hear that story and it's very difficult to sympathize with your dad, but there is this problem in it's not just evangelical culture, especially back in the 80s, it's the culture at large, and the way that evangelicalism has affected it is that like your dad had no context to talk about his feelings, his sexuality. He had nothing. Your mom had no context to process it at all. It's like that same story happens in 2019, and it's like, okay, we have context for this. We have stories that we've heard before. Yeah. We have, I watch TV and there are gay people, so I kind of understand what gay means.
You listen to Life After, and there's a really funny gay with a microphone. It's just
like my mantra that I say so much on the show, that I just feel like evangelicals need to understand. And there's example after example after example, is that repression does not work.
Yes.
You cannot repress your sexuality. It just does not work.
It doesn't work.
It's a fundamental part of who you are.
In the very least, you need context to talk about it and to have honest conversations about it. And the people around you need context to understand it. Or else you become isolated and you lie and you do stupid shit and you put people at risk. Or you rape, or you are a pedophile, or it's just it comes out in the ugliest ways.
It's gonna tunnel out somewhere.
Right. It's going to come out. It is absolutely 100% going to come out. Yeah. And you need to, not acknowledging that is the most dangerous thing that the church is doing. I literally think it's the most dangerous thing the church is doing.
I absolutely agree. I don't think that anyone escapes it without sexual damage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Even if you are, like myself, a heterosexual male, a straight man.
God, we know.
The easiest role. I still came out of that shit.
You didn't tell me this guy was great. What
Fuck off, Brady. Yeah, no, I still come out of it with shit that I got to work through, man.
Yeah,
we need to.
Everybody does, and I agree with you. I think it is absolutely the most dangerous thing, because it affects everything else. It affects how women are treated. It affects how children are treated.
Yeah.
It affects all of the rights that people think that women should have or should not have.
Yeah.
It's all, sex is at the core of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's why we probably don't want to go down the abortion road here. Sure. But, if the goal was to get rid of abortion, there are really easy ways to do that. That's not the goal. The goal is sexual control.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Everybody birth control and comprehensive sex ed, abortion rates plummet. It is not rocket science.
Right. Yes.
I don't want that.
That is not the goal. The goal. No, you're absolutely right. Holy shit. Yeah. Well, on that note, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we get back, we're gonna keep on down this. This is an intense episode. I like it. We're hitting the
road. Am I allowed to sing that?
Brady's not going to sing when we get back.
Oh, hello there, Chuck. I didn't see you there. How are you?
Good. Just editing the episode. What's up?
What's up? Oh, you commoner and your common talk. I guess I'm what you would say, doing not much.
What is this?
Chuck, psst. Chuck, it's me, your pal Brady. I'm practicing patronizing, so I'm working on being more condescending to people. Oh, do you have any idea where Matt can get some crumpets around here?
Why are you doing this?
For our Patreon. We've been asking people to patronize our page, and I didn't want to ask them to do something I wasn't willing to do it myself, so I figured I'd get some practice in.
Oh, God. Brady, no, that's not what it means.
Oh, no?
Listen. Listeners can go to our Patreon page pick the level you want to contribute.
Oh.
Each level has special rewards,
Okay.
like exclusive Life After minisodes,
or not safe for work bloopers,
or like a monthly collection of deconstruction memes.
and even personal consultations or meet up with your favorite host, Chuck and Brady.
Yeah, Brady. Patreon.com/thelifeafter.
I guess even you could find it. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We've been talking about rape and abortion. I know.
Oof.
Woof.
Heavy. Let's take it down a notch. Let's
Take it
talk
down.
about family. So much easier.
It is.
Brady, how was your Thanksgiving?
That's a long time ago. Ronna, we've talked about what our cultures could have done different. We've talked about what is it like to be a woman in patriarchy, which on all of those, if there's anything else you want to add, we want to hear about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But also, I just want to hear, practically speaking, as you're writing this book, when I tell my story, it's difficult because it involves ex-wives and mothers and dads all doing things that aren't always the best interest of the one who's telling the story, you know? And that's hard to navigate, and the weird Christian nuances and weird ways that fucks with our family dynamics. Can you give us some advice? What do we talk about? What do we not talk about, and how do we handle it?
Yeah, sure.
I can tell you about how I did it.
Yes.
I would love
and that's really, that's the limit of my expertise. I was able to tell my truth about my father's story because he's dead. So what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So kill your family members.
Wait till they die.
Take them out.
I left my children out of it as much as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
I did not tell their individual stories in any kind of detail. But they're so much a part of my life that they had to be there. I told them about it ahead of time. But it's not a story about them. And I took the same approach with both of my sisters. They're in there as characters, but I'm not telling their story.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't try to.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, run things by them ahead of time, ask them if I could use their names or not. The much trickier part was my ex-husband. And I did, in some of my final edits, go back through and take out anything that I thought, and I was looking at it honestly from a legal standpoint. Like I can tell things that actually happened because those are true.
Mm-hmm.
But I took out anything that could possibly be construed as subjective. I made really sure to not try to interpret his experiences, behaviors, or actions. It's not my job to tell his story. I have no right to try. So I didn't ever talk about, how I thought he felt about anything, because that's not my place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also I don't hate the guy, I'm just telling the story,
Sure.
for a larger purpose. And I tried to do the same thing with my mother, and I did tell her story a little bit more, but only as it intersected with me.
Mm-hmm.
Even as an adult, I tell some about a surgery she had that was quite traumatic, and I told that story from my own perspective in dealing with having a sick parent. So I think it's really, really important to tell your truth, to step into that, but know where that boundary is, where if you start to interpret somebody else's story, you stop before you get there. You don't ever have a right to tell somebody else's shit. You can tell your own shit, but not anybody else's.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's really important to explore your motivations when you're telling your story. Are you writing, is this revenge?
Mm-hmm.
Or why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you do it?
Because the stories from my childhood literally just came out of me. They just bubbled up and came out my fingertips into my computer.
Sure.
I couldn't hardly stop it from happening.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a way of processing my past.
Yes.
That I had for decades, just like, just going to pretend like that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that never works. So I was processing my childhood experiences, right, and making sense of it, because I found myself in this situation when my marriage ended. Like, how did I get to this place? And that's why I started writing. I started writing how I got to that place.
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping to do with your story? Like, how have people been taking it, and how have they been responding to it?
I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback. I haven't gotten any negative feedback to my face. It doesn't mean it isn't out there,
right?
But nobody has the balls to say it to me. That's okay. I get messages and emails from people who relate and kind of pour their heart out and tell me stuff about themselves that they couldn't possibly share with anybody else, but because I have bared my soul and everything else to such a great degree, they're like, oh, she understands why I did what I did.
Yeah.
I can tell this one person. And that's really gratifying, to be a safe person for people to send a message to and say, hey, I went through this too.
God, that's so important.
Yeah, because most people aren't gonna write a memoir about their fuck buddy and just tell it all, So I can go first. That's okay.
I love that. Yeah.
I'm claiming these experiences for women. I'm claiming them for myself, and I'm claiming them for us all. So if I can say, hey, this is what I needed to do to write myself, then maybe somebody else can not beat themselves up about what they did to write themselves.
I love that. One reason that we make this show, I look at it as a way to kind of pave the way out of a bad experience. And so the bad experience we talk about is leaving fundamentalism. And so the more we can kind of lay down a road that's paved and that people can just kind of stroll down instead of having to struggle through.
Right.
I hear you doing the same thing.
Alone, right?
Right. Because
so
we're all going on the same road thinking that each one of us is doing it alone. But it's like, no, look around you.
We think that we are. That's how it feels. And like you said a few minutes ago, we all come out with sexual damage. And so if we're all feeling alone and we're all so humiliated and ashamed and feeling guilty for the shit we did, especially the sexual shit we did when we were figuring it out.
Yeah.
That doesn't help if we have to bury everything that we're already dealing with under guilt and shame. And, oh my God, I could never tell anyone what I did.
But the more open we are, it's just easier. Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to go write a book about it or blog about it or tell anybody. But if you can know that you're not alone in it, and that some of the stuff that we do and go through is a normal part of the process. It's an understandable part of the process. Like guilt and shame, it just doesn't fucking help.
Yeah.
It's just more.
Look at what our precedent was of like, what is life like? Well, real life is from this Bible. And so we're reading this Bible, and it's like, that's what we have is the boundaries in our mind of what reality is, right? And if that's the only thing that we've been indoctrinated to.
I'm so bored already just by you saying that.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's true.
It's just
it's just a fucking boring way of looking at the world. You know?
Well, but I'm saying, well, not really, because I mean, you right around the corner could be a fucking dragon, and that would be normal to your worldview because you've been educated by a fantasy novel.
The rapture's coming, yeah.
Right. So the rapture's coming. We have magic powers.
God might tell your dad to stab you.
Right? Yeah. God might tell you to stab you.
There's angels everywhere. Like everything's just so hyperly.
Right. But amidst all of that,
your life is really
none of
bored.
which happens. Your life is incredibly boring.
But if you're indoctrinated, you're still going to try to view everything through those colored glasses. True. So it's not like, I'm going to fail this test in math. It's like, the demons are fighting each other over my GPA. Like it's that sort of like heightening of everything. That becomes our precedent. That becomes our expectations. What we think the world is like. But what's better, and the way that the universe has evolved and that our humanity has evolved, is that what we do is we don't have that many senses. Then we find ways to have senses. With that senses, we gather information. With that information, we're able to talk about it, make hypotheses, communicate, bounce ideas off of each other, and we make theories and conclusions, and if new information comes, then we can improve those. So like that's what we're doing now is we are getting the vocabulary, the senses out to figure out where the fuck are we in life now, and now we're able to communicate and share those ideas. You're able to talk about your fuck buddies, I talk about my fuck buddies and how that process
I didn't talk
is.
about mine, but I would.
There we go. But the point being that now that we shared those communications, our precedent is no longer Abraham, Isaac, and Moses, and Joseph, and Mary. Oof. Our precedents are Chuck and Ronna and other people that are actually living in the year that we're living around the people that we're actually around.
Right.
And we can dispel all of this fear because these abstract ideas are concretely keeping us imprisoned. But when we are able to break those barriers down, we're in reality.
Well, dang, Brady.
I went on a rant.
I'm good. I'm out. I'm good. I'm going to go to the bar. This is a wrap. No, that's fucking great, man. Yeah, no, I absolutely. That's such a good way to put it. That is such a good way to put it.
I chucked. I had a chuck moment.
So, yeah, you chucked. Okay, so Ronna, so a lot of our listeners, one of the biggest struggles that we see and encounter, like in our private group and just the emails we get is like fucking family, and like we ask this question a lot. Right? Like, it's like fucking parents, man. Like, they're indoctrinated. They can't see the world any other way. And it's painful. It's painful for us because we're like, I am valid in the way that I'm doing things is valid. And I want you to see that so bad, but it's like, I don't know if you ever will. Right?
Probably won't.
They probably won't. How have you handled your relationship with your mom? Because you stay in contact. Some people choose to just...
Absolutely. Yeah. I did lose contact I took a break for a long time when I was, it's been a long time ago now.
That's like an important, it's an important point in and of itself, is that it's like totally okay to take a break from people that are sucking the life out of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I took a break. And then we reconnected and we avoid some topics.
Yeah.
We don't really, she knows that I'm not a Christian, and I think that's really painful for her because she's sad that I'm going to hell. Like, really, I mean, she's getting up there in age, and I feel bad that she feels that way, and I really love her a lot. But we just don't talk about that stuff anymore, and we're gonna be nice to each other for the time that she has left.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I couldn't live next door to her and see her every day. I don't think that I could really handle that. I also have to acknowledge the ways in which we're alike. Because she's my mother, you know, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree and all that. Yeah. I mean, she's really a wonderful person in a lot of ways. And she's got wonderful, wonderful relationships with all of her grandchildren. And I think that is an easier relationship for her to manage because there's no baggage there. And it really brings me a lot of joy to see it.
Yeah.
I love that she'll text my kids and they talk to her, they go see her, and my sister's kids are very close to her as well. Those are really positive and wonderful relationships. And I want the last years of her life to be joyful and full of love because I'm not an asshole.
Yeah, I really feel that. Yeah,
I mean, she's my mom. I love her. Yeah. We're never going to see eye to eye on the whole religion thing, but that doesn't have to define who I am with her.
I feel the same with my mom. Like, my mom was a danger to me at a point, because she didn't understand my sexuality and thought that I was a danger to my son and whatever. But I stuck around and we talked stuff out and I set boundaries, and there are things that we don't talk about. And like you say, it gets better. I thought my mom would be the last person, but like she watches my son during the summer and I love her and she's good and she's learning and she's growing, but she's still penniless. But if your mom did move in next door, this is just a proposal. Everybody loves Ronna. I would love to. I would watch that show. That's basically what it'd be, right?
Everybody loves Ronna.
Holy shit. It's the least true thing that you have ever said.
That's saying a lot because Brady used to be a Calvinist.
I lie all the time.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. It's like there is a point where, and I'll say this, like this is to our listeners, like there is a point where this isn't true for every parent because some people are just fucking toxic people, but most parents are normal human beings that are and Christian parents just happen to be indoctrinated, right? Yeah. There's a point where you can take a step back and let all the shit go and rebuild your relationship with your parents and say, like, what do we have in common?
Yes.
Right? My dad, it's sci-fi and technology, and we argue about politics, but it's in like a cordial way.
That's cute.
And with my mom, it's baseball and like TV.
Really?
And yeah, it's great. We just we love baseball and we love TV, and that's what we bond over.
I love it.
And sometimes, sometimes you and my mom will get into a discussion about belief, and it's like we're just like, I feel like I'm speaking Mandarin when I say anything logical, but it's like whatever. She's listening and she's friendly. My dad, I don't talk about belief too much because he's way too dogmatic, But you find a way to make it work, and it's like, if you can, hopefully, if it's possible,
it's
connect with your
worth
parents.
It if you can,
it's
and if
totally
it's
worth it if you can.
Yeah. If all the parties involved decide to choose the relationship first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're gonna love each other
That's
first,
such a good way to put it. Yes. Thank you.
then everything else you can just let that take a back seat.
What are the go-tos for your mom?
What do you mean?
Like conversationally.
Well, okay. So my mom's not going to listen to this. So I can just tell you she's elderly now, right?
Yeah.
So she's mostly immobile. She can't get around very well anymore. So her world has gotten a lot smaller.
Yeah.
She still lives by herself. She has her house and her, like her yard and her grandkids and great grandkids now that come around. So that's what we talk about.
There you go.
What flowers are blooming, and there's raspberries on the vines, and the grandkids came over and stayed for dinner, and
Cool.
stuff.
Yeah. Very
Just
cool.
stuff.
I love that too, because it kind of dispels a fear that I think Christians would have of, oh, my daughter left the faith, she may not care about me anymore. She's one of those people now, or something. There's kind of like that otherness that happens, but you're able to prove through your actions that otherness is not there, that it's a real familiarity.
It kind of went the other way when, like she told me that they had a right to reject me because I rejected the faith, and I decided to just love her anyway because she's my mother, and I'm just not gonna accept that.
Damn straight. You have to empathize with the, you don't have to. We get to empathize with the indoctrination.
Well, I'm in a place now where I can. For a long time.
You cannot do that for several years.
Oh, God,
for sure.
No, you have to get objective. Like
several decades.
For several decades, depending on how deep your trauma goes, for sure. It can take a long time.
Yeah.
But it's, at the end of the day, we are human people, and we connect over human people stuff, like we can find it,
For me, I throw my son in the way, talk about my kid. He saves us all. Just
there you go.
Kid and Netflix series with my mom.
Very cool.
Ronna, we cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Such a good, helpful conversation. And
Thank
it's
you.
I'm not going to give any names, but we've had a previous guest on who was on her way to one of her hookups, and she asked me for advice.
Oh, yeah.
And I told her, go for it. And later on, she came back to me and she says, thank you. I had a lot of fun. And it was such a cool thing that I was able to be part of that in a weird ass way.
Yeah.
Go
for
out
sure.
there, have fun, everybody. Get your
safe.
shit together. Communicate.
Yes, be safe. Yes, also that. We didn't really talk about that in the intro, but yeah, dude, be safe.
Oh yeah. Use condoms, guys.
Use fucking condoms.
Oh my god. This episode's been brought to you by
Trojan.
Well,
Cool.
this has been Brady Harden.
This has been Chuck Parson. In the past, perfect.
And our wonderful guest of the week,
Yeah.
Ronna Russell. Do you have any? do you have any final words for our guest? Buy your book.
Final words for the listeners?
Yes.
Buy my book.
Where can
There
they
you go.
Rock your world.
Where can they
And
find
it's
you?
cheap. I have a website, ronnarussell.com. The book is The Uncomfortable Confessions of a Preacher's Kid, available on Amazon, available in paperback or Kindle.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good read. Even if you only read the sex, it's still worth it.
It's great. I also, your blog on your website is really good, and I read a few of those, and it's definitely worth reading. So yeah, check it out, listeners.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Oh,
Yeah,
our pleasure.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
listeners, remember, if you're struggling really hard with not rating and reviewing us on iTunes, I just want to encourage you to go and just do it. Just go rate and review us.
Rate,
5
review,
stars.
subscribe.
Subscribe. Yeah, that helps other listeners find the show.
Helps us out.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember, if you don't go to church, Sunday
Sundays
is just a second Saturday.
Let me kind of unpack that for you a little bit.
Fuck being in the middle, I am no Malcolm, I ain't no Martin. More like 95 Spartans kicked out the garden. Back to back stab at God King and ask for his pardon. My mind trying to break out the margins. Writing reflections on loose leaf, listen hard, my jargon is Darwin. Inciting infections of unbelief. Like what in the hell is a spiritual walk? But meditating on TED Talks, elevating events that are non-stop. Circulating your views in a closed crop. Cutting verses up like a chop shop. With copies and signs like a bookshop. Pasted in like Bibles on backdrops. Feeling bad for shit on your laptop. It's a bad prop for holding beliefs in a sad book. Relieving your grief in an outlook that promises peace with a bait hook that doesn't release. I was caught on the line of repression, asking myself the same question over and over and over with no progression. Decided to change my only direction ahead, leaving the foe for the spread. Headed to hell in my bed. If living is lying down, then I'd rather be dead. They said our thoughts are dangerous. Nobody's can we trust. Like we're made of angels.